Hey guys, we're so excited that you're back at the Mizell Show, here to listen to another episode of ours. This one specifically hits home for Memphians and for anyone that's been affected by mass shootings or kidnapping or even sexual assault. We just wanted to make sure that we kind of preface this episode by saying a little warning. Maybe if you're listening in the car with kids, maybe this one's one to skip, or if you were specifically impacted by recent events in Memphis or other ones that have happened over our nation, we just wanted to make sure that we kind of gave you guys that disclaimer before we got started. Hope you enjoy this episode. I hope it impacts you, and thanks for listening.
Perfect.
Welcome to the Mizell Show.
An inspiration for a new generation.
Hi, I'm Alanna Mizell, a loving mother of two, a devoted wife to Steven, and an entrepreneur helping women realize their dreams and potential.
And I'm Steven Mizell, caring father of two, a devoted husband to Alanna, and a driving force to help young men prepare for life after college football.
And if that wasn't enough, we're a biracial couple.
She was raised in the North, but I was raised in the South.
The only thing normal about our lives, who am I kidding? It's never normal around here. Join us for the Mizell Show.
Right now. All right. Well, we are. This is Alanna. We are joined again from, I think, one of our OG guests, Dominic Lawson, who is actually the host and founder of Black in America, another phenomenal podcast that's out there. He's done a phenomenal job, we think, of mentoring us and kind of walking us through this life of podcasts. And behold, we were just having a conversation the other day.
Yes. One thing that I would like to preface also about Dominic is that even from the jump, and you're the same way with the podcast, you just get what you get.
Yeah.
Like you're just going to be honest and authentic. And the podcasts are the same way. And I love that. And the last time he was on, he was finishing out another podcast, about to start Black is America, and now has awards rolling in.
From Black in America.
For Black is America.
So we appreciate you for joining us again.
So he's kind of a big deal.
Look, big deal, a little bit going on. It takes time out for us. So we appreciate that.
I'm something like a big deal. How about that? I'm something like that.
Well, if they could see your background of your Zoom, they would agree that you are a big deal.
There we go.
Hey,
I appreciate that.
But we're going to dive right in. So Dominic is also a Memphian, current Memphian, lives in the Memphis region. And for people who are listening to this podcast who are not in the Memphis region, Memphis has gone through a few situations in the last week. Situations that have truly shaped the outlook on the city, shaped the perception of the city. And so I'm gonna call it what it is. This podcast is gonna be Dominic and us discussing not Black in America, but Black in Memphis. And with the current situation of the tragedy with Eliza Fletcher, not to go into details, if you want to learn more about it, I mean, it's been all over the news, but long story short, she was tragically abducted, kidnapped, and then murdered by an African-American male. While running in Memphis. And so I first had to just dive in and ask Dominic, what is it like to be a Black male in Memphis right now?
First of all, thank you so much again for having me on this amazing platform, the Mizell Show. I always love, chopping it up with the both of you, and just so amazed of where you've taken this podcast. I'm always amazed at that. Like you said, proud Memphian, and the past week has been challenging. It's definitely been challenging. Being an African-American man in the city, given the scenario that we're in, it's challenging in itself. I mean, let's be honest, it was challenging before.
Yeah.
Right. And so right now we're in a heightened sense of preservation, a heightened sense of awareness, definitely keeping your head on the swivel. You're definitely, if you're, if you've had that talk as a kid, as an African-American kid, and growing up to be an African-American man, then you're probably going down the streets of Memphis, abiding by all traffic, all traffic, speed limits, the lights. Your music's probably a little lower than it normally is. You know what I mean? And so you're just, long story short, you're probably just trying to not draw as much attention to yourself as possible. Just so you don't have, so you can just limit your exposure of any type of interaction with law enforcement. That's what it's like as an African American man in this region, because we live in a tri-state area. You know, what I mean? It's Memphis, Mississippi, and Arkansas, and so in all three of those scenarios, you're just being extra vigilant, extra costly, and being mindful that if you have a family, that is not just you. You have to be mindful of all these things for. You know what I mean? Because if you're a man of a household and stuff like that, and you have kids and you have a significant other, then they are also depending on you to
come home.
Make sure you come home. Lower those exposure points to law enforcement. So that's probably what it's like right now.
And so you said a specific word kind of right when you were talking about what it's like right now, and you said the preservation. And what was so interesting, I had to quickly grab my phone and I was like, what does that word mean? And I just want to read it real quick because I think it so perfectly depicts what I've seen of Black males now that I am married to one. Here's what it says: the activity or process of keeping something valued alive, intact, or free from damage or decay. And isn't that so true? And as you went into talking about your family, you're literally trying to keep the Black man and Black culture alive, only to the point that it cannot decay.
That's fair to say. Look, when you look over the course of history and Black culture and the Black family unit, it's had its peaks and valleys. It's had its peaks and valleys. You can talk about the nuclear family of the 50s, and it being pretty strong, and then certain let's just call a spade, certain policies and governmental policies led to certain things where you talk about the late 60s, early 70s, and then lo and behold, you have the crack epidemic, the 80s and 90s, you know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it feels like, from many different angles, whether it be financial, whether it be, governmental or whatever, that there are spokes of attack or attack points when it comes to the African American man, and that's not to say that, Alanna being a woman, there are definitely certain things that you have to deal with being a Black woman, my wife. There are certain things she has to deal with. But definitely as an African American man, you feel it. And when you have that historical precedence of where a lot of this comes from, it can and it can be jarring, it can be alarming, and that's where that preservation word comes from. It really does. And so trying to be mindful of, like you said it best, Steven, like I'm just trying to get home. I'm just trying to get home. You know what I mean? And so that's something I had to be mindful of.
And something else that kind of you talked about, as an African American male in Memphis right now, you talk about law enforcement, you talk about just, doing what you need to do. But I would love for you to elaborate that in this situation with Eliza Fletcher, do you feel like it's a heightened sense, not just from the cops, but also maybe the white community? As in, a African American male might have to be a little bit more on edge of how he speaks to a white female walking or running or of that standard.
Well, and to that, like a follow-up I would have is it only white? Or is the Black man so marginalized right now in Memphis that it's an entire subcategory?
I'll speak on that. I think personally for me right now, it definitely would be the Caucasian female with what happened and how
not Caucasian males.
I guess if a Caucasian male saw a Black male doing that, you're right. I guess that kind of brings it to a point. Yes.
Right. Because I'm just thinking of the Caucasian household who is the Caucasian male is now concerned about his wife that may want to go for a run who no longer can.
Yeah.
He's worried about his spouse. He's worried about his daughter. He's worried about his niece. He's
on high alert. You're right.
He's also
this isn't going to intermingle.
Yes.
All of these.
Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah. That's a good point.
So that to say, what do you think, Dominic, or what are you currently experiencing?
I mean, if we're being completely honest, I'm staying in the house as much as possible. If I'm being honest, again, to quote a famous hot boy, it's on the block is hot right now.
Yeah.
And so as an African American man, and so when you think about again the historical, precedents there, when you think about the story of Emmett Till, and Emmett Till's not the only story like that. That's the story we know.
It's just happened the one. It's
right.
Awful.
It's the one.
Why is that a home? It's like a brand almost. Like you say Nike, you say Emmett Till. Like
people about that story.
Awful.
Like exactly, but that's kind of what this reminds me of, and so there's a heightened sense of again, being cordial, being tactful, but also keeping distant.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's almost remind me of kind of the separate but equal doctrine from the George Wallace, Alabama government. It's almost kind of like that in the sense of and let me be clear, there are a lot of amazing people who are white in the Memphis area.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely, absolutely, Alanna, absolutely.
Oh my God,
absolutely. Yourself and
plenty others.
That's where it is.
But Alana's ranked number one though. But,
there you go. Yes.
Hey, first or last.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. But there's a lot of people where I feel like for the most part, maybe 95% of those people, it may not be an issue, or at the very least, it's not at the surface.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But but when you think about that 5%, and you think about the lynch mobs of the early 40s and 60s, and you think about the Ku Klux Klan of that time, and you think to yourself, and that's the beauty about history, right? I think a lot of times we look at history as a story, which it is a story, but it's also fact. Like that happened. This is a thing that actually happened, right? And so we think, oh, that'll never happen again. People don't go and lynch mobs and stuff like that. And then January 6th happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're reminded that when you hear about the quote unquote silent majority, that's still a thing.
Yeah.
And they have certain reservations, certain biases, certain prejudices, or whatever you want to call it. And when it comes to a story or scenario like an Eliza Fletcher, it bubbles up.
Right. Right.
And when it bubbles up, you just never know what may happen.
Right.
You just never know what may happen. And so and we talked about this, a few days ago, whether that is perception or reality, it doesn't matter. It's equally dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
It's equally dangerous. And so again, there's that high alert piece as an African-American man, we have to be mindful of, and that's one of the things I highlight in Black America. It's like, look, we teach these stories, we share these stories because they happen, they exist. But it's also it's a teaching tool. History is a teaching tool.
Yeah.
And the cliche, but cliches are cliches because they are true. If you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And so when we think about Eliza Fletcher, and I mean, obviously, we never want to marginalize or minimalize a loss of life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They say in the Quran that, one loss of life is the loss of humanity, or the death of humanity, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, you never want to minimize and marginalize that. But from this scenario is a heightened sense of alertness, is a heightened sense of preservation, and a heightened sense of just go to work, come home, go to the grocery store, come home, go do what you need to do, come right home. No lollygagging, no whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly, you know, and I'll end here, you know, Memphis right now, to a lot of us, is a sundown town. In the sense of, you know, old school rules apply. When them street lights come on, you need to be in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what's so interesting about what you were talking about, you're talking specifically about decades, like the 50s and 60s. And when people say, oh, that won't happen again. First of all, that wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Like, you may think it is because maybe you were born in the 2000s, but that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
You know, really, if I could just jump in real quick, just to add on to that point. Last year in 2021, the last person who drew a Civil War pension passed away.
Dang.
So
right.
And so this was like the daughter or a very young bride of a Civil War veteran who drew a pension as a spouse, right? So you had a lot of Civil War vets who married very young, not necessarily for companionship, but more so for the purposes of taking care of them because they're older and stuff like that. And so marrying at 12, 13, 14 years old in the early 1900s was not necessarily uncommon.
Right.
And so the last person who drew a Civil War pension from the VA, from the Civil War, just died last year. So to your point, Alanna, absolutely, that's not that long ago.
No.
That is absolutely not that long ago.
When there are still people living that know exactly what we're talking about, it could repeat itself like in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I think another thing that I would love to ask both of y'all is that are both Memphians.
Mm-hmm.
How does the assassination of MLK in Memphis play into the continued segregation, specifically when situations like Eliza Fletcher come up?
I personally feel like it's something that the city has never and will never get over. I feel like it's continuously, you celebrate it, and you celebrate the tragedy, and you celebrate what we can overcome from it in the life of Martin Luther King. But I still think when you step out of this Memphis area, people still see Memphis as that place.
Yeah.
They still see Memphis as where it happened. And the crazy thing is, nobody talks about Dallas and JFK. I mean, never. But when it comes to Memphis, it was like the place that ended Martin Luther King. So we had that continued fight, or that continued, like, not to say, just burden that we carry about it. And so when things like this happen, it just kind of heightens it, like, oh, there's Memphis again. You know, they're the place that MLK got killed.
It's the first thing that comes up.
It comes up to the mind. And so it's a constant struggle and a constant burden that I don't think this city will ever overcome.
Dominic, what do you think?
You know, I have a theory. Because what we know is when it comes to poverty and economic opportunities, that leads to crime, that leads to, you know, issues that we see on a regular basis here in the city. I have a theory because my dad used to tell me all the time that, like, Atlanta, St. Louis, Memphis, even Dallas to a certain extent, we're all on the same playing field economically in like the 40s and 50s, right? And so when MLK was assassinated here, because I have friends all over the country, all over the world, and they say, oh, yeah, that's the place to kill King. I didn't kill King. I wasn't alive.
Exactly. But
you might as well have.
Right. But the thing is, like, the theory is, I feel like we were economically shamed.
Yes.
Because of King, right? When you talk about big corporations and stuff like that, I feel like we were economically shamed because we saw Detroit skyrocket, we saw St. Louis skyrocket, we saw Atlanta skyrocket, we saw Dallas skyrocket, but Memphis was just here. And I feel like we were economically shamed from people who didn't want to come into the city and build like headquarters and stuff like that. Granted, you know, we have FedEx and AutoZone.
But as you say that, though, those are homegrown, though.
Yeah,
Those are the people, Memphis boys.
Exactly my point.
Yes,
that's exactly my point. And so it's like those things are homegrown, but like, but now we're starting to get, because Ford here, they have the Oval City that they're building here now.
Yeah.
But
they couldn't get too close though.
That's true.
They are not in Memphis proper.
I know they needed land and stuff, but it's still like they still didn't,
And so again, and one of the things I judge the economic viability of a place is extracurricular, in particular, sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I think we were economically shamed from the time, James Earl Ray fired that shot. Mm-hmm. And for the next 50 years, nobody wanted to do business in Memphis like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so where did they go? Up the road to Nashville if they wanted to be in Tennessee.
Did you know that I sell makeup? Not only do I sell makeup, but the makeup that I sell is 3D makeup, which allows you to highlight and contour your face in a super simple compact. As a mom, I could not survive without my simplified routine. Not only that, but it's exactly what you need. Exactly when you need it, all in one spot. Go ahead and check out Alanna Mizell on Instagram or alannamizell.com to learn more.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's definitely something that you speak on, and we'll kind of go back into the tragedy of Eliza Fletcher. The suspect in this case, his rap sheet started at 12, and has gone constantly through this. His brother has a rap sheet. Father was in prison, and so when you hear these kind of tragedies of this family lineage, how did the system fail him and Eliza Fletcher's family?
Well, again, and this definitely ties back to what I was just saying. That economic shaming led to less opportunities, which led to something that we call in the mental health community called ACEs. It's called adverse child experiences, right?
Okay.
And so when you had those adverse child experiences, trauma, poverty, racism, whatever the case may be. It leads well into not only does it lead well into your adulthood, it becomes generational.
Right.
You pass it down almost like you pass down an inheritance. You pass down those experiences. And so when you have a situation where and it just goes to show that, like, and you brought up an excellent point, Steven, that it failed both families, not just
right,
not just that gentleman, who is now in court and stuff like that. But it's a shame. It truly is a shame, and it failed both instances. And so, with no economic viability, a questionable school system. And to be fair, I came from that school system.
So I'm not going to sit up here and say like it's entirely,
terrible, but there are some challenges. There are some opportunities for growth there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the picture as a whole, it goes to show that if you don't take care of a certain sector of the community, it affects the entire community.
Exactly.
It affects the entire community.
And it might not affect it when you do it, but eventually it could come back in different situations.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like these things are not linear. These things are not linear, and we only want to talk about them and bring them up when something like an Eliza Fletcher happens. And I think it's honestly unfortunate for Fletcher and her family that she's kind of become, a pawn in that. Oh, now we got to do something. Oh, now we have to do, like, we should have fixed this years ago.
Right.
And so have we made strides? Yes. Let me be clear about that. We have made strides, but it's one of those things where, long story short, there's so much more work to do. There's so much more work to do. And this may be a situation where it's going to take one generation who is willing to sacrifice and build in order for the next 40 generations to be okay. But there has to be a generation that's willing to do that collectively. I know there's bits and pieces of people who are willing to do that in a generation, but it's going to have to take a generation to turn this thing around. And I think we have the capability to do it, but it's just the willingness is something that's totally different.
Right. And I think what's interesting that you all said that I don't know that everybody realizes is we were talking literally about the top 1% and probably the bottom 1% in this scenario. The bottom 1% in that they have the generational curse of poverty and incarceration, whereas Eliza Fletcher and her top 1% is she was an heiress. She was a billionaire heiress.
Yeah.
So we are talking about that kind of difference and that kind of scope in Memphis. And I never realized that until I moved here, how rich the rich are and how poor the poor are.
And that's one thing I will say that separates us from those cities like the Atlantas and the Dallases, that in Atlanta, that top 1% probably never sees that bottom 1%. But in Memphis, they cross paths. It's the way the city is. Alanna hates how our city map goes, but
it makes no sense.
The way the city is cross-referenced and way things are, this is one of the few places where the top 1% can come in contact with the bottom 1%. You know, you look at some of these other places like the basketball arenas, football, like Dallas is in like, you know, miles away from maybe that area. Then the Hawks are miles away from, but you go downtown Memphis where the FedEx Forum is, you right there, top 1% is going to cheer on Ja, and that bottom 1% is out there waiting, you know, holding out a cup potentially, you know, when you leave the game.
Right.
And it's a crazy dynamic that you have in Memphis that you won't see in a lot of cities.
You know, you're absolutely right. And it's one of those things where, because as a person who grew up in the inner city and grew close to downtown, I grew up in Lamar Terrace Projects, which is not, it's not Lamar Terrace Projects anymore, but where it was is a hop, skip, and a jump from the FedEx Forum.
Yeah.
Hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that, you know, that dynamic that you speak of is prevalent and clear. But the thing is that always speaks to a strong economy where you're talking about at a macro level and the national level, or at the micro level at the city level, is that there's not a strong enough middle class. Like the Atlantas you talk about, the Dallas you talk about, they have strong middle classes. And so it's like, in a city like Memphis, not saying that there's no person in the middle class or the upper middle class, but it's a wild pendulum swing from the haves and the have-nots. It just is. And so that, again, this is where that economic shaming that I believe happened comes into play. You know, when it comes to that, I definitely have been trying to get in touch with like a historical economist here in the city who can back that up, but that's just a theory I have. But when I tell that to people, they're like, you know what, you might be on to something there.
Right.
So,
right.
But you know, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Weird. I may know someone that would be good to like connect you with about the similar topic, but not on this. But so I've had a few moms reach out to me and sensitive to the fact that we're talking about Black males that have done the crime, knowing that they are going to have to talk to their children about what happened, just because of the small community that Memphis is, but trying to be cautious to not put the fear into their children of Black males, like intentionally trying to be cautious of that. So to both of you, what advice would you give?
I'll let you go first.
He straight palmed that to you.
You know, it's difficult because, again, let's be honest, we all have biases. We all have biases, and there are certain images and phrases and platforms that feed into those biases.
Yep.
Right. I think the first thing that can help is to challenge your own biases. And that takes a lot of introspection and reflection that not everybody's willing to do.
Yeah.
You know, if you see, you know, a young man with dreads and you know, and baggy pants and stuff like that, don't necessarily assume that he is a certain way. You may talk to him, he speaks the King's English.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? or he speaks an entirely different language.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the first things that parents can do is just teach their kids to challenge their own biases. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, it's kids trying to get their parents to challenge their own biases.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because we live in a world and in a country right now where I was talking to an economist from the Fed Reserve,
mm-hmm.
and he talks about the browning of America. It's becoming more and more diverse, and it's one of those things where it's kind of like it's going to be pretty difficult to have certain biases to be in business, to have a job, and this, that, and the other. It's going to be difficult. So I mean, that's another tool to like, look, either you get along, or what the kids call it, cancel culture. You get quick canceled. Which is not exactly the best tool, but it's one of those things where it is what it is. But but challenge your own biases, and honestly, just talk to somebody who is not normally in your circle. Go volunteer. Go, because I think the part that that really challenges racism and biases is to go out and meet people that's not in your circle.
Yes.
You have to, because you will start to find that, first of all, when Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, doesn't matter. Neither of those demographics are monolithic.
Right.
They're just not.
Right?
Just because a person has a certain hue doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I got them figured out. I know what this person's all about. No, you don't.
Right.
So I think challenging those biases and going out and meeting people in different circles and different backgrounds and demographics could go a long way to say, you know what, that person, that's not what I thought they were. I'll give you a classic example. In college, I went to school in East Tennessee, and I went to go visit my friend and his family in Bristol, right? I think for like Christmas break or something like that, right? This is the Tri-City area, East Tennessee, deep East Tennessee, right? And so friend was like, hey, I'm gonna bring my friend home. He's Black, this, that, and the other, and his father had reservations until he met me.
Right.
And he was like, you know what? Now he didn't say you were one of the good ones, which is problematic in itself.
Yeah, it's a good one. Right. You don't want to be that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. But he was like, you know what? I have a different outlook about certain things when I met Dominic, right? Because I just didn't know, because again, his dad, growing up in Appalachia, Tennessee, had never been around a lot of people like him, or at the very least somebody who didn't look like him from the area, because there's Black people in East Tennessee, obviously, but to be from West Tennessee, because I don't know if you know this, Alanna, but like there's Tennessee, and there's 3 different states, like West, Middle, and East is like 3 different states.
It's 3 different
right?
Right.
Yes.
Like my first night in college, guy had a banjo. I had a culture shock. I was like,
you were like, no. I stayed in state.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
No.
But I think just being around other people who don't come from where you come from and don't look like what you look like can go a long way. So just go out and meet the people, like immerse yourself in another culture, because that can go. I honestly, in my experience, when you do that, 90% of the people that you come across that you think are like you're going to have an issue with it gets wiped out almost immediately. And the other 10%, you were never going to change their minds anyway. They were always going to be that thing, right?
My theory is, with the 10%, somebody has hurt them so badly that they don't even want to change.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to heal from their pain. They're not going to accept something different because they were hurt so badly. And I can't change that.
Exactly. And to be fair, there's confirmation bias.
Right.
Yes. Like to where it's like I see something on let's just say a certain network.
Yeah.
Right. See something on a certain network, and it just constantly feeds that machine. It constantly feeds that.
Yep.
Oh, I knew that's what they were like. I knew that, just like, just like they said on whatever. Right. And so I think a lot of times when people are saying things, and this is why I share with everybody that, like, when you get on a microphone or on the screen, whether you call yourself a journalist or not, there is a certain level of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the thing is that, like, when you're on a screen or behind a microphone, you're already given a certain level of credibility that people are just going to assume that you're right. And we know firsthand that that's not always true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So just that's what I'll have to say about that.
Right. Pretty much what Dominic just said is I make stuff up all the time.
No. He, at the end of the day, I definitely I think what you said is so spot on. And one thing that I would add to that is that as you have those conversations with your children or whoever, you also have to look at the person's heart and their actions. Like, you have to also let them see that this person, no matter what their skin color was, they chose to do wrong, and they chose to do something not right, evil. And yes, this person is a certain race, but also remember, like, that person could have been the same color, and what they did was still wrong. Right. And so I think that is spot on.
So,
if I can add on to like when we saw, the person who did what they did to Eliza Fletcher, you weren't going to find many in the Black community like, right on, brother. Like, no, that's a terrible
thing. Yeah,
that's a terrible act. Like, nobody's going to champion that.
Yeah,
at all.
Nobody's doing fireworks and giving high fives.
No,
like that's not what was happening.
No.
So the advice, I was interested to hear what y'all had said, but the advice that I gave was the only person in your family that realizes that man was Black is you.
Yeah.
Those kids don't know. And so I kind of leaned on the unconscious bias, and I was like, the only way that your daughter is going to start to be fearful specifically of Black
is how you deliver that to
is not only how you deliver it, but how you act when there are Black men around you, behind you, when you were out for a walk.
Yeah.
That's the only way she's going to pick that up.
That's so true.
Because she doesn't see it. She knows that he's Black. Like that. She's not saying, oh, I'm colorblind. That's not what she's saying. But those stereotypes are not embedded yet. Yeah. It's kind of like what Steven said. What he did was a horrific thing. Here's what we can do for the family. Here's how we help these people. Here are the ways that you stay safe for you. Not even mentioning it. But the biggest thing I think is parents to continue to walk with confidence and not with fear. Not all of a sudden grab their, gun, their mace, their whatever, if they see a Black man near them. Like that's not the solution here.
No, not at all.
And just to add to what you were just saying, Alanna, I talked with a sociologist. His name is Resma Manicum. He goes around the country talking about culture bias, anti-racism practices and stuff like that. And he talks about this idea of a self-declarative ally and an operational ally. And Steven, I think you were talking about this earlier as far as like a person's heart and their intentions, right? Because people will go around and saying, I'm an ally, I'm an ally, I'm an ally. And so his question would be, what have you done that would have told me you were the ally without you saying you're an ally?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of that out there as well. But you're absolutely right, Alanna. Like that, it's feeding the machine that we talked about earlier. Yeah. Like, you didn't know he was Black. Somebody pointed it out to you. Like, you don't have to reinforce that. And which is why, again, this is why when you have a microphone in front of a screen, when the way you describe certain people matters.
Yeah.
Right. One of the conversations we were just having recently was about the opioid epidemic that we're kind of going through right now and stuff like that. Is like, how people who are treated, who are deemed an addict, or a person who has a disorder. The addict will get disciplinary action. The person with the disorder will get treatment. And so it's one of those things where, again, like you were just saying, Alanna, how we reinforce those biases and stereotypes can be crucial when we're talking about our kids and talking about other people about biases and things of that nature.
My final question.
You said you had 2 questions.
Mine and yours.
No, you said I got 2, and I said no, I got 1.
Okay. Well, no, my final question is, as you know, we have a lot of people that end up being how do kids say it? I'm just calling it this: keyboard killers or talking heads, and they quit to complain. But
what does that mean?
When you get behind a keyboard and like on Twitter or social media, you're like typing, but you would never do it in person, or you would never come out and actually do those actions, or
you're a troll,
you're trolling, because that's another way. So what are some actions that we feel that we could take as a community? You have this past week they're gonna do a run to honor her, to finish her run. You know, that's cute. But what are some?
That's cute.
I mean, it is something nice. It is something good. I wasn't trying to downplay the run, but that's like what happens after the run. I mean, like you're finishing her run. I appreciate it, but what else tangible can we do?
But what's next?
What's next? Exactly. And even through the run piece, something that got under my skin is that, you know, they want to do the run to finish it. I appreciate that. They only want women to do it. And then in some of the comments, never read the comments, it was like, oh, the men can just stay to watch the cars and make sure they don't get broken into. And I'm just like, the stereotype, I'm just like, go focus on the run, not that you think
if you're worried about your car, stay home.
Exactly. That's the thing. But
don't leave anything in it and be like me. I just leave it unlocked. If you want something, just open the door. Don't smash the window. It's going to take longer.
But again, it goes back to this is Memphis stereotype. We're going to go do this great thing, but by the way, your car might get broken into. So
there's going to be security guards there.
I'm
Don't
sure
worry.
They're now going to be security guards, but to say all that,
let me just tell you, nobody's going to drive by and kidnap y'all while you're doing this run.
No, the MPD is going to be there.
That's not the moment.
No, that's not going to happen. Well,
right.
I hope it doesn't happen. I can't guarantee that.
I'll knock on wood.
Okay, so back to the question. What do you think are some tangible things that we as a community can actually, you know, make some kind of efforts towards making a change?
You know, I would love to see. I mean, I think the run, I understand your point, Steven. I think the run is great. It's symbolic, but it's, let's be honest, it's window dressing. I would love to see at that meeting a pre-meeting or a post-meeting to schedule something the following month to attack a certain issue. Like let's do that root cause analysis, that causation, if you will. What are some of the dynamics and aspects that led to Eliza Fletcher's, you know, untimely demise? You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily like, you know, I mean, let's be honest, somebody with ill intentions is what led to that demise. But what, of course, right? But what are some of those aspects of that person's life that was negative, that led him down that path? It goes back to that ACEs thing we was talking about earlier, adverse child experiences, right? Or what are some of those things that we can attack? Is it mentoring, you know, a certain group of people? Is it if some of those dollars, maybe they're raising some money with the run? I don't know. Could some of that money be used to somebody in the Memphis neighborhood that could be put to action, right? Like a code crew, like a Let's Innovate Through Education, like a STS Enterprise, like some of these people who are out here doing the work, who wouldn't necessarily get that type of funding, you know, but are trying to create a better Memphis, a Memphis where kids have a chance, where they don't go down the path of I think his name is whatever the gentleman's name that, you know, committed this heinous act, that don't go down that path. I would love to see some type of action go in that direction, because let's be honest, like that's that's where this came from. That's where this heinous acts came from.
Yeah.
Due to lack of economic opportunities, empowerment, and the like. And so that's what I would love to see. I would love to see, some of those keyboard warriors to, put your money where your mouth is. And I don't mean the ones who are talking about doing harm and stuff like that. I mean the ones like, when the people get on social media and like, hey, somebody should XYZ. Why don't you be somebody?
Yeah.
Right.
Why don't you be that person? Or or if you say, well, I am not the one who, well, I don't have this resource. I don't have that resource. I guarantee you somebody is doing the work that you're suggesting should be done.
Yeah.
Right.
I guarantee you, because a lot of people like to say that, that people are not out here trying to stop the violence, this, that, and the other. Black lives only matter when a cop kills, a person or minority or whatever the case may be. No, somewhere in this city, somewhere around the country, but definitely somewhere in this city, every weekend I hear about somebody marching, doing like an arts and crafts show. A good friend of mine does books and breakfast on Saturdays, like once a month, right? Where he's tackling not only, making sure the kids get something to eat on a Saturday, because we know there's, I don't know the numbers, but we know in this city, not just this country, in this city, that kids depend on Memphis Shelby County schools for meals.
Yes.
We know this.
Yes.
Right. And so on Saturdays, somebody's stepping in to fill the void. We also know that there's an issue with literacy.
Yeah.
And so with this books and breakfast, scenario, he is tackling this issue. If you can't give time, give some money. You can't give money, give some time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so these are some of those things that can be done, because there are so many. I can't even. There's so many I can't even count. Like, as many stars are there in the sky. There's that many nonprofits in this city.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot.
So many.
And they're all fighting for the same damn funding from the same sources. Forgive my French, but they're all trying to get funding from the same sources, right? Those homegrown 3 enterprises we were just talking about earlier, right?
Right.
And so I would love for people to go to those less fortunate nonprofits, or those nonprofits that don't get the looks that everybody else get, and fund those things, fund those projects, right? That's what I love to see, because let's be honest, dollars talk, right? A good friend of mine who I was interviewing for another podcast, he said a budget is a moral document, because a budget tells you what you care about.
Right.
A budget tells you where you feel like your money is going to go, whether that be for revenue, profit for a company, or what you care about.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would love to see those moral documents, filter to people who are out here doing the work, if you don't have the time to do that work. And so again, even if you don't have the money, you can give some time.
Right.
An hour a week, something like that. So that's what I would love to see. Those are some of those actionable steps that we can start with and then go from there.
I'm trying to think if there's somewhere that maybe has a group of the nonprofits already organized that we could link to.
I'm sure there's a link. I mean, what is it? City Odyssey, or there's a couple places that we can link to let people see the opportunities. That'd be a great idea.
But one thing that I really love a lot about what y'all were saying is what happens when she stops running. But I think what's the most important is she didn't do anything wrong. And that's kind of what I'm having the hardest part with the run. Remember her, run, do you, but you choosing to run when it's dark out or when fits you isn't going to help the problem. Like, that doesn't do anything.
And that's why I feel, as a city of Memphis, we continue to have nonprofits. We continue to miss the mark, because in this symbolic run, the run would be even more impactful if you were running with Black males. If you were running side by side with Black males as white females, saying, you know what, we understand that this was a hideous anomaly in your community, but we're going to come together and still be okay to come together and run. Because what people will see when they learn from this is it is a systematic, it is a city, it is so many more things that failed Eliza Fletcher's family and this man that did this hideous crime. So you can't just see it as, yeah, she is a victim, but like what we did as a city caused her also to be the victim in everything else that happened.
Right.
I am highly confident. I'm not a runner.
Yeah.
But I am highly confident there is a minority led group that has a running group. I'm confident in it.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, so so let's just say let's call a spade a spade. It's still window dressing.
Yes.
It is.
100%.
It's still however, it can be 10 times more impactful if you did something like that, I believe.
Right.
If you did something like that. Because you know, segregating it, there's that word again.
Yeah.
Segregating it only allows for, we are holding this particular demographic on a pedestal. We don't want to intermingle with, you know, this and the other. Because again, you know, 95% of Black males are in this city are not fit to come and do what that gentleman did.
Yeah.
They're just not, right? You know, and so to know that and see that, and this goes back to what we were saying again, intermingling with people who don't come from your background.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and it shows the city that like, hey, we're trying to move forward, because if we keep doing fun runs, right? If we just keep doing fun runs and doing the way we're doing it, we cannot get past that stigma of that's the place that killed King. We can't. If we keep doing that, we will not get past it. We just won't.
No, and we greatly appreciate your time and your insight as always.
So if you guys are enjoying this, definitely leave us a review. Give us the feedback. If there's something you guys want us to talk about, reach out to us on our website at themizellshow.com. There is a contact section. You can put it in there. We would love to hear about it. Or you can always go over to Instagram at The Mizell Show. Also, as always, don't forget to screenshot this episode and just add it to your stories and tag us on Instagram, on Facebook at The Mizell Show. Thanks, guys. Are you loving The Mizell Show? Well, we love you all. And did you know that you can have me and Steven talk to your team or a group of 25 of your friends? All it takes is 25 people showing up on either a Zoom call, a Facebook Live, or really anywhere. Hopefully in person sooner rather than later. But how do you get us? So all you have to do is email themizellshow@gmail.com, or you can direct message us on Instagram at The Mizell Show.